My name is Tameka Lewis. I am 65 years old, with my silver-streaked curly hair framing my warm brown face, and I never imagined that at this stage in life I'd endure something as devastating as what I'm about to share. When I laid eyes on my 6-year-old granddaughter with her precious head entirely bald, it felt like the ground was swallowing me whole. Her thick, curly locks were vanished without a trace. All that remained was her tender scalp laid bare, fragile as if scraped by a harsh machine. My heart seized up completely. It was my son Calvin's birthday gathering. The family was all invited. I showed up with my famous sweet potato pie, the one my granddaughter Latoya adores above all. I anticipated her dashing over to me like she always does, her bouncy braids swinging wildly, calling out "Grandma Tameka" in that melodic voice that warms my spirit. But as I stepped into the den, the child was huddled in a corner, head lowered, sporting an oversized blue knit cap that swallowed her small frame. Something felt off. My grandmotherly senses blared that tragedy had struck. I moved toward her cautiously. "Latoya, sweetie, how about a big hug for me?" I coaxed gently. She lifted her gaze with those wide eyes, and I spotted the held-back tears, tears no 6-year-old should bear. "Grandma, I can't remove my cap," she murmured in a fractured tone. Her bottom lip quivered like a petal in the wind. My fingers started trembling. "What happened to your hair, baby girl?" I inquired, though dread already gripped me. With utmost care, I eased off the blue cap. The sight shattered my spirit into fragments. Her lovely kinky curls, the ones I'd lovingly detangle and style whenever she visited, had been savagely buzzed to the skin. It wasn't a professional trim. It was a brutal, pitiless shear, like someone had wielded a clipper without a shred of mercy. "Lord have mercy," I gasped, unable to hold it in. "Who did this to you?" Latoya started weeping quietly, those hushed sobs that emerge only when a soul is utterly crushed. "Mommy did it," she breathed faintly, glancing at her mother, my daughter-in-law, Kimberly. Right then, Kimberly sauntered in with a cocktail in hand and a grin that chilled me to the bone. "Oh, Tameka, have you checked out Latoya's fresh style? Kiko," she quipped, chuckling like it was trivial. "Isn't it trendy? It's the latest vibe." "Trendy?" I echoed, stunned. "Kimberly, how could you inflict this on a little one?" Kimberly shrugged with utter indifference. It had to be done. This child refused to shampoo her hair. She'd wail every time I attempted to brush it. So, I fixed it permanently. "But she's only 6, I shouted, fury bubbling up my neck. "How could you buzz her head bald?" "It's merely hair, Tameka. It'll regrow." Kimberly sipped her drink and giggled once more. "Plus, it's a prank. Can't you tell? She's blowing it out of proportion. Kids nowadays are such performers. A prank." She'd labeled the torment she'd inflicted on my granddaughter a prank. I glanced at Latoya, who ducked behind my legs, shaking like a frightened sparrow. Her small fingers gripped my floral skirt in sheer desperation. "A prank," I uttered deliberately, each syllable turning venomous on my tongue. "You call degrading your own child a prank?" Kimberly rolled her eyes. "Oh, Tameka, spare the theatrics. It's just hair. In a couple months, it'll sprout back some." But I knew my granddaughter well. I knew her pride in those curly tresses. I recalled all the evenings we'd shared, me tenderly parting and twisting them as she chattered about her school escapades. I remembered how they gleamed when I crafted intricate cornrows for special occasions. Her hair was her glory, and Kimberly had ruthlessly stripped it away. I scanned for my son, Calvin. I spotted him in the kitchen pouring beverages like all was fine, as if his child wasn't in the den with a shaved scalp and a wounded spirit. "Calvin," I summoned tightly. "You were aware of this." He pivoted, and I detected unease mixed with defeat in his gaze. "Mom, Kimberly figured it was best. Latoya's hair was constantly matted. And you permitted your daughter to be buzzed like a boot camp enlistee?" I questioned, indignant tears pricking my eyes. Calvin exhaled heavily. "It's no huge issue, Mom. It's just hair." Just hair. Those phrases rang like a tormenting echo in my head. To them, it was just hair. To my granddaughter, it was her pride, her confidence, her fractured self-worth. I returned to Latoya, still sobbing mutely. I scooped her up and sensed her tiny frame quaking against me. "No more tears, darling," I hushed in her ear. "Grandma's got you." But inwardly, I seethed with anger. This wasn't the initial instance Kimberly had demeaned my granddaughter. She'd always tossed cutting remarks, always devised ways to make her feel tiny and worthless, and I'd stayed mute too long. Today, that ended. Today, I'd seek justice for my granddaughter. I lifted Latoya and carried her to the restroom for a private chat. I secured the door and lowered to her height, though my 65-year-old joints grumbled. Her small eyes were swollen from so much weeping. "Tell me precisely what occurred, baby," I urged in my gentlest tone. Grandma must hear the full story. Latoya hiccuped and started recounting amid sobs. "Yesterday morning, Mommy roused me super angry. She claimed my hair was filthy and that I was a nasty kid. My chest ached. I'd seen Latoya merely 3 days prior, and her hair was spotless." Kimberly fibbed, but I had washed the day before that. "Grandma, I promise you." Her tiny hands shook as she spoke. Mommy dragged me to the bathroom and grabbed the clipper Daddy uses for his beard. The electric clipper. "The electric clipper?" I queried in shock. Latoya bobbed her head. "She ordered me to hold still or she'd nick me. I bawled hard, Grandma." I bawled and pleaded for her to quit, but she persisted until every strand was on the tile. Tears cascaded down my cheeks. I pictured my precious granddaughter petrified, witnessing her lovely curls tumble while her own mother callously degraded her. "Was your daddy there?" I probed, though I suspected the truth. "Yes, he was on the couch watching sports. I hollered for him, but he stayed put." Latoya gazed at me with those pure eyes brimming with hurt. When it was over, Mommy handed me the cap and said it was my fault for being a grubby, defiant girl. Rage erupted inside me like molten fire. Not only had she buzzed my granddaughter, she'd pinned the blame on her. She'd demolished her self-image and sown guilt in her 6-year-old soul. "Grandma," Latoya breathed close to my ear, "do you think I'm hideous now?" Those words obliterated me. I cupped her little face and met her eyes squarely. "Latoya, hear me good. You are the prettiest girl on earth. Hair or no hair, you're flawless. You get me?" She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't fully convinced. The harm was inflicted. We exited the restroom and rejoined the celebration. The tunes blared. Folks chuckled and conversed like nothing amiss, as if my granddaughter hadn't been viciously shamed mere hours before. I sought Kimberly and found her giggling with my sister Danielle. She appeared utterly at ease, as if buzzing a 6-year-old was everyday business. I neared them with Latoya clasping my hand. "Danielle, were you aware of what Kimberly did to my granddaughter?" My sister eyed me puzzled. "What do you mean?" She buzzed her head clean. "See for yourself?" I removed the cap from Latoya, who promptly shielded herself with her small palms. Danielle inhaled sharply. "Good Lord. But for what?" Kimberly cut in with a chortle. "Oh, I already told y'all. It was essential. This kid didn't clean her hair right. It was always oily and knotted. Plus, now it's breezier in the warmth." "Oily?" I erupted. "I personally shampooed her hair 3 days back at my place. It was impeccable." "Well, it soiled quick then," Kimberly retorted smoothly. "Little ones are like that." Danielle stared at me wide-eyed. She was a grandma too and grasped the gravity fully. "Kimberly, this is overboard. You could have trimmed it regular, not buzzed her like a convict." "It's just hair," Kimberly parroted like a stuck tape. "Y'all are flipping out. Back in my time, kids complied and that was that. If Latoya had listened from the start, this wouldn't have gone down." "In your time?" I queried skeptically. "Kimberly, you're 28, not 50. What time you referring to?" "Well, in my household, they instilled true discipline," she snapped haughtily. "Not like these days where all kids are pampered." Right then, my neighbor Terrell, who'd attended with his spouse, drew near. He'd witnessed the exchange, his face etched with revulsion. "Pardon the intrusion," Terrell boomed, "but I got 3 grandkids, and I'd never dream of doing that to 'em. This ain't discipline, it's malice." Kimberly sneered at him. "Nobody solicited your view, mister." "I don't need soliciting," Terrell shot back steadfastly. "When I spot a grown-up harming a kid, it's my obligation to speak up." "Harming?" Kimberly cackled wildly. "Please, drop the drama. It's just a bold haircut." But I'd spotted more. Through the whole dialogue, Latoya had pressed tighter to me, quivering at each word from her mother. It wasn't mere fright, it was sheer dread. This child was horrified by her own mom. "Latoya," I murmured softly, "want to grab some water in the kitchen with me?" She nodded eagerly, but as I moved to guide her, Kimberly halted us. "No, Latoya stays put with me. She's dodged enough." "We're only fetching water," I clarified, striving for composure. "I said no." Kimberly's tone turned ominous. "This girl gotta learn to mingle, not cower under her grandma's hem whenever she's displeased." I eyed my granddaughter and saw raw panic in her gaze. She dreaded remaining with her mother. She feared her. At that moment, my son Calvin joined the cluster. "What's the ruckus? Why the uproar?" "Your mama's blowing up a tiny thing," Kimberly cooed to him. All 'cause I trimmed Latoya's hair. Calvin regarded me wearily. Mom, please don't stir trouble. It's just hair. Trouble? I couldn't fathom his words. Calvin, have you seen your daughter's state? Seen her shaking in terror? She's okay, Mom. She's just acting up like usual. Those words stung like a blow. My own son dubbing his 6-year-old dramatic for her trauma. My own son aligning with the one who'd degraded his child. Acting up? I reiterated measuredly. Your 6-year-old is acting up because she was buzzed against her wishes. Mom, cut it out. Calvin eyed me annoyed. Kimberly's her mom and she calls the shots on her hair. You ain't got no say. It felt like a gut punch. My son, my flesh and blood, was upholding the unforgivable. He was picking his wife over his kid's welfare. I gazed at Latoya, weeping quietly anew. I gazed at Kimberly, smirking triumphantly. I gazed at Calvin, dodging my stare. And right then, I knew my course. I wouldn't permit my granddaughter another instant in that poisonous setting. I wouldn't stand idle while they kept demeaning her. I grasped Latoya's hand solidly. We're out. What you mean out? Kimberly barred my path, arms folded. Latoya ain't budging. It's her daddy's birthday bash, and she ain't dipping 'cause you're pitching a fit. It ain't a fit, I countered steadily, shielding Latoya behind me. It's safeguarding my granddaughter from further shame. Shame? Kimberly guffawed that phony cackle that grated me. Tameka, you need to chill. You're imagining spooks where none exist. But I'd witnessed plenty. For the 2 years since Calvin wed Kimberly, I'd noted alarming shifts in my granddaughter. Latoya had ceased being the lively, free-spirited child I cherished. She'd grown hushed, bashful, forever sorry for all. Spooks, I echoed. You know, you're spot on. I've been spotting stuff I'd rather overlook. I dropped to one knee by Latoya and whispered to her, Baby, recall when you said you didn't want to sleep over at Mommy and Daddy's no more? Latoya dipped her head timidly. Kimberly stiffened instantly. Why'd you say that, sugar? I pressed, though I guessed already. 'Cause Mommy gets real mad, Latoya mumbled. And when mad, she spits mean words at me. What kind of mean words? Kimberly butted in sharply. That's it? I ain't letting you turn my kid against me. Turn? I rose. I'm just inquiring why my granddaughter fears her own home. She don't fear, Kimberly hollered. She's fabricating 'cause you coddle her too much. But, Latoya piped up shakily, Mommy calls me a rotten girl. Says it's my fault Daddy don't love her like before. My veins iced over. What else she tell you, baby? She says I'm as pesky as Grandma Tameka, that we both meddlers who wreck everything. My granddaughter's revelations landed like grenades amid the space. Danielle clapped hands to her lips. Terrell shook his head, plainly irked. Kimberly flushed crimson. That ain't true. This kid's fibbing. A 6-year-old fibbing on specifics like that? I queried disbelievingly, a kid who can't craft complex tales. Yeah, 'cause you're twisting her. Just then, Calvin emerged with a soda, visibly peeved by the party disruption. What's the hollering now? Your wife's been hurling vile stuff at your kid, I detailed, holding steady. And now the girl's supposedly fibbing. Calvin huffed, exasperated. Mom, Kimberly wouldn't spout mean to Latoya. You're leaping to wild assumptions. Wild? I detonated. Calvin, look at your kid. See her bald head. See her quaking in fear. She's quaking 'cause you're freaking her with these probes. Calvin shot back without glancing at Latoya. You're brewing needless fuss. I couldn't grasp my son's obliviousness. His own child was plainly scarred and he denied it. All right, I intoned, eerily calm. If you reckon I'm nuts, let me pose to Latoya in front of all. I knelt by my granddaughter once more. Latoya, when Mommy buzzed your hair yesterday, did you weep? Yes, Grandma. And what did she say while you wept? Latoya eyed her mother terrified. Kimberly scowled. You can share, baby. Nobody gonna fuss. In a whisper barely heard, Latoya said, She said ugly girls weep heaps, and if I didn't hush, she'd clip my brows too. The hush after was thunderous. Even the beats dimmed. Danielle clutched her chest. Terrell balled fists in restrained fury. You called your 6-year-old ugly? I demanded of Kimberly, voice quivering with outrage. I didn't say that. Kimberly shrieked frantically. This kid's mixed up. And mixed on the brows, Gikte. I pressed. Kimberly clammed up for the first time that day. Her quiet spoke volumes over any admission. Calvin finally eyed his daughter, truly eyed her. And for once, I spied doubt's shadow in his gaze. Latoya, did Mommy really tell you that? Latoya nodded, tears streaming her face. And she said if I snitched, she'd buzz it shorter. That broke the dam. I sprang up and squared off with Kimberly. Not only did you scar my granddaughter, I sliced in a razor-sharp tone, but you menaced her to zip it. What sort of beast menaces a 6-year-old? I ain't a beast. Kimberly was unraveling. Y'all twisting context. What context okays dubbing a kid ugly? Danielle queried, silent till now. What context okays menacing her? She was overdoing it, Kimberly bellowed. I was just hushing her by calling her ugly, Terrell jumped in. Lady, that ain't hushing a kid. That's mind abuse, but out of what's not yours. Kimberly was unhinged now. This my kin. Your kin? I sneered. That's how you handle kin? By shaming them, menacing them, crushing their spirit? Calvin finally stirred, but not as hoped. Enough all, he roared. This my pad and my shindig. If you hate our parenting, bounce. My throat seized, my own son booting me for shielding his kid. Our parenting, I drawled. Calvin, you view buzzing a 6-year-old's head and calling her ugly as raising? It's discipline, Calvin countered, voice wavering. Kimberly's instilling good ways. What good ways? I blasted. The way of fear, the way of feeling ugly, the way of clamming when hurt. LaToya sobbed louder, clutching my floral skirt frantic. Her wails echoed the room. Kimberly seized the chance to lash. See, now you worsened her tears. This all you're doing for showing and stirring. But I'd resolved. I locked eyes with my son and stated icily, Calvin, if you see defending your kid as stirring, you don't know me one bit. I hoisted LaToya. She latched like a lifeline in turmoil. We're bouncing now, I declared, and ain't returning till this mess flips. You can't snag her, Kimberly shrieked. She's mine. She's my grandbaby, I steel-voiced back. And I won't let you keep harming her. I strode to the exit with LaToya hoisted. Behind, Calvin hollered, Mom, quit the drama, you're flipping on all. Drama? That term trailed me out. My granddaughter was scarred, shamed, menaced. But I was the dramatic for guarding her. I departed that home with my granddaughter cradled, vowing I'd never let harm befall her again, whatever the cost. The drive to my spot was the quietest ever. LaToya conked in the rear, drained from the ordeal. Each rearview peak broke my heart further. Her tiny bald head seemed so exposed, so defenseless. At home, I gently toted her straight to my room. I tucked her in the bed she'd snoozed in countless nights as a tot. I ditched the blue cap and softly patted her head. Her skin was raw from the careless clipper Kimberly wielded. Grandma, she mumbled, eyes shut. Can I live here forever? Those words wrecked me. A 6-year-old shouldn't favor grandmas over parents. That happens when home ain't secure. Sure, baby, I whispered, knowing legally it wasn't. You're always safe here. LaToya sank deep asleep. I watched, recalling ignored signs these 2 years. The shifts in demeanor, the dread when Kimberly fussed, how she'd turned so muted and compliant. How'd I miss it? How'd I let my granddaughter suffer hushed so long? My cell buzzed. Calvin. I ignored till voicemail. He redialed relentlessly. Finally, I picked. What, Calvin? Mom, return LaToya now. His tone bossy, like I was a defiant worker. Nope, I said flat. What you mean, nope? She's my kid. Mom, you can't just grab her. Your kid? I chuckled sourly. Since when you treat her as such? You've let your wife abuse her 2 years. Kimberly don't abuse. She's firm. Calvin, heed me close. My voice chilled. Your wife buzzed your kid's head, called her ugly, menaced her, and been mind-scarring her months. That firm? You're flipping on all like ever, like ever. Those words ignited me, like ever. When I ever flipped on grandbaby's welfare? Calvin paused. Mom, just return her. We talk tomorrow. No, LaToya stays till y'all fix this. You got no right, Calvin yelled. Kimberly, her mom. And where you when your wife buzzed your kid's head? I asked. Where when she begged help? More awkward quiet. I didn't know it'd be that extreme. Didn't know? My pitch climbed. Your wife snags electric clipper for 6-year-old's hair, and you didn't know extreme. She said just trim. Calvin, you heard your kid weep? Quiet. Heard her weep? Yes or no? Yes, he confessed softly. And what'd you do? I figured normal. Kids weep haircuts. Kids weep trims, Calvin. They don't shriek terror when buzzed raw. I caught Kimberly muttering background, words fuzzy. Kimberly says, return LaToya now or cops, Calvin relayed. Great, I said unfazed. Have Kimberly call cops. I'd love explaining why my grandbaby bawled and petrified of her mom. Calvin hushed. Kimberly hadn't pondered that. Plus, I added, got pics of Latoya post-cut and witnesses from party. Danielle and Terrell saw all. Mom, please. Calvin's voice cracked. Don't complicate. I'm complicating. I marveled his gall. Calvin, your kid traumatized. When I asked if she want to stay forever, yes. That not worry you? She's muddled. No, Calvin, she's scared and justified. I ended call, silenced phone, needed next move think. Went kitchen, whipped Latoya's fave supper, mac and cheese with greens. Cooking, I pondered revelations. The harsh jabs, menaces, ongoing mind torment. This didn't kick off yesterday with buzz. This brewed months, maybe years. When Latoya stirred, we dined at kitchen table. She munched hungrier than months. Grandma, she chewed, think my hair grow pretty again? Sure, baby, it'll sprout lovelier. And you can help me style when it does daily if you like. Latoya grinned first time that day. A tiny, shy, real grin. Post-dinner, I drew her warm bath and slipped my tea as nighty. Drying, I saw nicks on scalp from rough clipper. Hurt, sugar? I asked soft, fingering a nick. Kinda, but I don't weep 'cause mommy says weepy girl's ugly. I ducked to bath to sob private. Couldn't let Latoya see crumble. She needed fortitude, not more ache. Back found her mirroring at my dresser. Grandma, I really not ugly? I knelt beside, we mirrored joint. Latoya, know your prettiest part? She shook no. Your heart, smile, hugs, doll care. That beautifies you, not hair. But mommy says girls sans pretty hair ugly. Mommy wrong, baby. Many beauties rock short or no hair. I flashed phone pics of famed stars with buzz cuts. Her eyes sparked. They pretty too. Very, and you too. That night Latoya bunked with me. She nestled my chest like scared pup. Each sleep twitch, she mumbled, no, mommy, please. Or, sorry. Even dreaming, my granddaughter apologized. That was life's longest night. I stayed awake listening to her nightmares, stroking her shaved head silently, promising her that I would never again let anyone hurt her. At 3:00 a.m., my phone vibrated with a message from Calvin. Mom, Kimberly is very upset. She says that if you don't bring Latoya back early tomorrow, she's going to do something drastic. Please don't make things worse. I read the message and felt a chill. What kind of woman threatens to do something drastic over a 6-year-old girl? What kind of mother uses her own daughter as a blackmail weapon? At that moment, I knew this was much more serious than I had imagined. Kimberly was not just a strict or impatient woman. She was someone genuinely dangerous. And my granddaughter had been living with that person for 2 years. I woke up at 6 a.m. with Latoya still snuggled against my chest. During the night, she had had 3 different nightmares, and each time she woke up crying, I would comfort her until she fell back asleep. Her little hands clung to my nightgown as if she feared someone was going to take her away. My phone had 17 missed calls from Calvin and 5 increasingly desperate text messages. The last one sent at 5 a.m. said, Mom, Kimberly hasn't slept all night. She's walking around the house like crazy. Please bring Latoya back. I'm begging you. I carefully got up so as not to wake my granddaughter and went to the kitchen to make coffee. I needed to think clearly about what to do next. While the coffee was brewing, my phone rang again. This time it was Danielle. Tameka, how is the girl? She asked me in a worried voice. Better, but very traumatized. Danielle, last night she had horrible nightmares. She was screaming and apologizing in her sleep. Oh my God, this is much worse than we thought. Worse how? Danielle sighed deeply. After you left yesterday, I stayed and talked with some cousins. It turns out that Latoya told our cousin Brittany a month ago that her mommy punished her by cutting her hair a little bit each time she misbehaved. I felt as if I had been hit with a hammer. What? Brittany thought the girl was exaggerating, but now it all makes sense. Kimberly has been using Latoya's hair as punishment for months, and no one told me anything. My voice rose dangerously. Brittany thought it was just kids being kids. You know how they are. But yesterday, when she saw Latoya completely shaved, she realized the girl was telling the truth. I hung up the phone with my hands shaking with rage. It wasn't just the cut from yesterday. Kimberly had been psychologically torturing my granddaughter for months, using her hair as a punishment weapon. I went back to the bedroom and found Latoya awake, sitting on the bed, hugging one of my pillows. Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well? She shook her head. I dreamed that Mommy was cutting my eyelashes like she had said. I sat next to her and hugged her tightly. That's never going to happen. Do you hear me? No one is going to hurt you as long as I'm here, but I'm going to have to go back with Mommy. The question broke my heart because I didn't have a clear answer. Legally, Kimberly was her mother and I had no custody rights. I'm trying to fix things so that you're safe, I said with all the honesty I could. I made LaToya's favorite breakfast, pancakes with syrup and strawberries. While we ate, she told me more details about what she had been living through. Grandma, do you remember when I came to your house 2 months ago with my hair a little shorter? Yes, I remember. Mommy cut it because I spilled juice on the table. She told me that careless girls didn't deserve pretty hair. Every word was like a dagger in my heart. And what did your dad say when this happened? Dad was almost never home. And when he was, Mom acted differently. Of course, Kimberly hid her true personality when Calvin was present. She was an expert manipulator. At 9:00 in the morning, my doorbell rang insistently. I went to the window and saw Calvin's car parked outside. He was standing at my door with Kimberly next to him. She looked disheveled, as if she had indeed not slept all night. LaToya, go to my room and close the door. I told my granddaughter, don't come out until I tell you. I opened the door, but I didn't invite them in. What do you want? We've come for our daughter, Kimberly said in a hoarse voice. Her eyes were red and swollen, but not with sadness. It was pure rage. Your daughter is fine where she is. Tameka, please. Calvin tried to use a conciliatory tone. We understand you're upset, but this has gone too far. Too far? I repeated in disbelief. What went too far was shaving a 6-year-old girl's head. Kimberly exploded. I'm tired of this drama. It's just hair. She'll forget about this in a week. She'll forget. My voice became dangerously calm. Kimberly, do you know that LaToya had nightmares last night? Do you know that she woke up screaming and apologizing? Kids have nightmares all the time. And do you know that she asked me if she could stay with me forever because she's afraid to come back with you? For the first time, I saw a shadow of doubt cross Calvin's face. She really said that? Really, your daughter is afraid of you. I told Kimberly directly. That's a lie, Kimberly yelled. You're manipulating her against me. I don't need to manipulate her. Your behavior speaks for itself. Just then, Terrell appeared in his yard. Seeing us arguing, he approached the fence that separated our houses. Everything okay, Tameka? He asked in a protective tone. Everything's perfect, Terrell. I'm just protecting my granddaughter. Kimberly turned to Terrell in a fury. Mind your own business. When I see a child being mistreated, it is my business, Terrell replied firmly. No one is mistreating anyone, Kimberly yelled. But her voice sounded hysterical. Ma'am, Terrell spoke in a calm but firm voice. Yesterday, I saw that child with her head completely shaved, trembling with fear. That's not normal. Calvin finally spoke. Terrell, I understand your concern, but it's our family. And that's precisely why you should care more. Terrell replied, I have 3 grandchildren, and I've never seen any of them as scared as that child was yesterday. Kimberly was completely losing control. All of you are crazy. It's just a haircut. In other countries, they shave kids all the time. In other countries, I asked her. Kimberly, what countries are you talking about? Military prisons. That's enough. Calvin finally exploded. Mom, you have to give LaToya back right now. She's my daughter. End of story. Your daughter? My voice became sharp. Since when do you act like she's your daughter? Where were you when she was being shaved? Where were you when she was called ugly? Calvin fell silent, but Kimberly took advantage to attack. Tameka, you're making that child sick with your ideas. You're creating problems where there are none. Problems where there are none. I laughed bitterly. Kimberly, your daughter asked me yesterday if she was ugly. A 6-year-old girl shouldn't even know that word applied to herself. Kids say a lot of silly things. Silly things. Terrell joined the conversation again. Ma'am, yesterday I heard that child telling her grandmother that you threatened to cut her eyelashes and she was still crying. Are those silly things too? Kimberly turned pale. She hadn't expected there to be witnesses to that confession. I didn't say that exactly. What did you say exactly? I asked her. Kimberly stammered for the first time since I had known her. I was just trying to calm her down by threatening her. Calvin finally reacted. Kimberly, did you really say that to LaToya? It was a joke, Kimberly yelled desperately. The whole thing was a joke. This family doesn't understand humor. A joke. Terrell shook his head. Ma'am, shaving a child and threatening her is not humor. It's cruelty. Just then I heard LaToya crying from my room. She had heard the yelling and had gotten scared. Look what you've done. I told them with contempt, you've scared the child again. I went into the house and locked the door. I went straight to my room and found LaToya hiding under the covers. "Mommy is coming to take me," she asked in a trembling voice. "No, my love, you're not going anywhere where you don't feel safe, but she's going to punish me later." Those words broke my soul. My granddaughter knew that she would eventually have to pay for having caused problems. "LaToya, listen to me very carefully. You haven't done anything wrong. None of this is your fault, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep you safe. Do you promise me?" "I promise you." Outside, the yelling continued. Calvin and Kimberly were arguing with each other now, probably because Calvin was finally realizing the magnitude of the problem. I took my phone and looked up the number for my lawyer. It was time to take legal action. This situation had gone too far, and I wasn't going to allow my granddaughter to return to an environment where she was psychologically abused. "LaToya," I told my granddaughter as I dialed the number, "we're going to fix this. I promise you." My lawyer, Clarence Washington, arrived at my house 2 hours after my call. He was a 60-year-old man, a family man, and a grandfather like me. When I explained the situation to him on the phone, his response was immediate. "Tameka, what you're describing to me is child abuse. I'm on my way over right now." While I waited for the lawyer, Calvin and Kimberly had been ringing my doorbell every 15 minutes. I ignored them completely. Every time the bell rang, LaToya clung to my body, trembling. "Grandma, they're going to force me to go." She asked me again and again. "I'm doing everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen, my love." When Mr. Washington arrived, Calvin and Kimberly were sitting on my front steps. Upon seeing the lawyer, they immediately stood up. "Who is he?" Calvin asked with concern. "My lawyer?" I replied from the doorway. "Mr. Washington, these are LaToya's parents." The lawyer greeted them politely, but maintained a serious expression. "Sir, I understand there is a family dispute. Could you explain your version of events to me?" Kimberly immediately began to speak breathlessly. "Sir, my mother-in-law took my daughter without my permission. That's kidnapping. I want her back immediately." "I understand," the lawyer said calmly. "And what was Ms. Lewis's reason for taking the child?" Calvin and Kimberly looked at each other nervously. It was a misunderstanding," Calvin finally said. "What kind of misunderstanding?" "My wife cut our daughter's hair and my mother got upset." Calvin explained, completely minimizing the situation. "I see. Could you be more specific about this haircut?" Kimberly intervened aggressively. "I cut her hair because it was dirty and tangled. She's my daughter and I have the right to decide about her hair." Mr. Washington took notes. "Did the child agree to this haircut?" "She doesn't have to agree. She's 6 years old." Kimberly yelled, "I understand. Could you show me the child? Tameka won't let us see her." Kimberly was losing patience. The lawyer looked at me. "Ms. Lewis, could you show me your granddaughter?" I went to get LaToya. When she came out of the house holding my hand, I heard Mr. Washington inhale sharply. The completely shaved head of my granddaughter with the small visible cuts was shocking. "Good morning, LaToya," the lawyer said in a soft voice. "I'm Mr. Clarence. Could you tell me how you feel?" LaToya hid behind my legs but replied in a low voice. "I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "My mommy will punish me for making everyone angry." Mr. Washington looked at Kimberly sternly. "The child is often afraid of being punished. All kids are afraid of punishment," Kimberly replied defensively. "LaToya," the lawyer continued, "who cut your hair?" "Mommy with Daddy's machine." "And how did you feel when that happened?" LaToya's eyes filled with tears. "Very sad. I cried a lot and asked her to stop, but Mommy said that ugly girls cry a lot." Calvin turned pale. It was the first time he had heard directly from his daughter what had happened. Mr. Washington continued to ask with professional patience, "Did your mommy tell you that you were ugly?" LaToya nodded, and she told me that if I told anyone, she was going to cut my eyelashes too. "Your eyelashes?" "Yes, and that girls without eyelashes look like monsters." The silence that followed was absolute. Even Kimberly had fallen silent, finally aware of how her words sounded when a 6-year-old repeated them. Mr. Washington closed his notebook. "Folks, what this child is describing to me constitutes psychological child abuse. Threatening a minor, using degrading insults, and using physical punishment as a form of control are considered forms of abuse." "It's not abuse," Kimberly yelled desperately. "It's discipline." "Ma'am, calling a 6-year-old girl ugly is not discipline. Threatening her with cutting her eyelashes is not discipline. It's cruelty." Calvin finally found his voice. "Sir, I understand that it looks bad, but Kimberly didn't have bad intentions. Intentions don't matter when the result is psychological trauma, the lawyer replied firmly. This child shows clear signs of traumatic stress. What signs? Calvin asked, genuinely confused. Excessive fear of being punished, separation anxiety, emotional regression, and nightmares. Your grandmother informed me that the child had multiple nightmares last night. Latoya pulled on my skirt. Grandma, can I go inside? I don't want to be here. Of course, my love. When Latoya went inside, Mr. Washington continued to talk to Calvin and Kimberly. Folks, I'm going to be very clear. If you try to recover this child by force or call the police claiming kidnapping, I'm going to immediately file a report for child abuse. I have witnesses, photographs of the child's condition, and her own testimony. Witnesses? Calvin asked nervously. Mr. Terrell witnessed the entire confrontation yesterday, Ms. Danielle also, and I have information that other family members have observed concerning behavior for months. Kimberly broke down. For the first time since I had known her, she looked truly scared. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted her to obey. Ma'am, a 6-year-old girl obeys out of love and respect, not out of fear and threats. Calvin approached the lawyer. What do we have to do to solve this? First, Ms. Kimberly needs professional psychological help. Second, the child needs therapy to overcome the trauma. Third, you need to learn appropriate parenting techniques. And fourth, Ms. Lewis will maintain temporary custody until a child psychologist determines that it is safe for Latoya to return home. Temporary custody. Kimberly was alarmed. For how long? As long as necessary, this is not negotiable. And if we refuse? Kimberly asked defiantly. Mr. Washington looked her directly in the eyes. Then this becomes a social services case, and a judge will decide your daughter's future. And I assure you that a judge will not look kindly on a mother who shaves her 6-year-old daughter's head and threatens to cut her eyelashes. Calvin put his hands on his head. How did we get to this? You got to this because you allowed the abuse to continue for months, the lawyer replied bluntly. Ms. Lewis informed me that this was not an isolated incident. What do you mean? Calvin asked. Your daughter told family members a month ago that her mother punished her by cutting her hair a little bit each time she misbehaved. This is a pattern of behavior, not a single mistake. Calvin looked at Kimberly in horror. Is that true? Kimberly began to cry. I thought it was a good way to teach her that actions have consequences. Cutting her hair is punishment. Calvin was beginning to understand the magnitude of the problem. Mr. Washington intervened. Folks, I have to go, but I want to make the next step very clear. Latoya is staying with her grandmother until further notice. You will seek professional help immediately, and any attempt to contact the child without supervision will be considered a violation of the conditions. After the lawyer left, Calvin and Kimberly stood on my front steps like zombies. Finally, Calvin spoke. Mom, can we see Latoya for 5 minutes just so she knows we're not mad at her? I considered the request. You can see her, but I will be present the whole time, and at the first sign that you're scaring her, you're leaving. I went inside to get Latoya. My love, your dad and mommy want to say goodbye to you. Are you okay with that? Latoya nodded nervously. Are they going to be mad at me? No, my sweetie. They just want to say goodbye. We went out together. Calvin knelt down to Latoya's level with tears in his eyes. Latoya, Daddy wants you to know that he's not mad at you. None of this is your fault. It's okay. Latoya nodded without speaking. Can Daddy give you a hug? Latoya looked at Kimberly with fear. Then she looked at me. I nodded reassuringly. Calvin hugged his daughter softly. I love you very much, Latoya. We're going to fix this. I promise. When they separated, Kimberly approached shyly. Latoya, I'm sorry. Mommy was wrong. It was the first time Kimberly had apologized for anything. Latoya looked at her with those big wise eyes that children who have suffered too much have. You're not going to cut my hair anymore? My granddaughter asked. No, my love, never again. And you're not going to call me ugly. Kimberly began to cry. No, my sweetie, you are beautiful. Mommy was terribly wrong. For the first time, I saw real humanity in Kimberly. For the first time, she seemed to understand the damage she had caused. But the damage was already done, and healing was going to take a long time. But the first few days after the confrontation with the lawyer were strangely calm. Calvin and Kimberly had disappeared completely following the legal recommendations to seek professional help before attempting any contact with Latoya. My house had become a safe haven where my granddaughter was slowly beginning to heal. Latoya and I established a new routine. Every morning we had breakfast together while we planned the day. I had transformed my office into a temporary bedroom for her, decorating it with her favorite colors and buying new toys. I wanted her to feel at home, not like a temporary guest. "Grandma," she told me one morning while we were having breakfast, "my hair has grown a little bit." I went to examine her little head. Indeed, a soft, curly fuzz was beginning to appear. "Yes, my love, it's growing. Do you want me to put a special cream on it to make it grow faster?" Her little eyes lit up. "Does that cream really exist?" "Of course it does. And there are also special vitamins for hair." It was a lie, of course, but I bought organic coconut oil and children's vitamins. Every night we turned massaging the oil into her scalp into a special ritual. She would sit in front of the mirror while I gently massaged her head, telling her stories about princesses who had also lost their hair because of evil witches, but who had gotten it back more beautiful than before. On the fourth day, my phone rang. It was Calvin. "Mom, how is Latoya?" "Better." She's starting to smile again. Could I talk to her on the phone just for 5 minutes? I miss her so much." I looked at Latoya, who was coloring at the kitchen table. "Latoya, your dad wants to talk to you on the phone. Do you want to?" She stopped coloring and looked at me with uncertainty. "Is Mommy going to talk too?" "Just Dad," I assured her. Latoya nodded and took the phone with her small hands. "Dad?" From where I was sitting, I could hear Calvin's broken voice. "Hello, my princess, how are you?" "Good. Grandma is taking very good care of me. She's massaging my head so my hair grows. I'm so happy to hear that. Daddy misses you very much. I miss you too. Daddy, when are you going to come see me?" There was a long pause. "Soon, my love. Daddy is learning new things to be a better dad. And Mommy." Another pause. "Mommy is learning too. She loves you very much and is very sad for having hurt you." Latoya was pensive. "Is Mommy really sad?" "Very sad. She cries every day because she realizes she was wrong. But she's not going to be mean to me anymore." "No, my princess. Never again." After the call, Latoya was quiet for a while. Finally, she asked me, "Grandma, do you think Mommy is really sad?" "I think so, my love. Sometimes we adults do very ugly things because we don't know how to handle our feelings, but that doesn't mean what they did was okay. And what if Mommy really changes?" It was a difficult question, Latoya. Real change takes a long time. It's not something that happens overnight. Like my hair. Exactly like your hair. It grows little by little, day by day. That same afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Brittany Owens, a child psychologist that Mr. Washington had recommended. "Lewis, I understand you have your granddaughter in temporary custody due to a situation of abuse." "That's right, doctor. I'd like to schedule an evaluation with the child to determine the level of trauma and design a treatment plan. Would it be possible for you to come in tomorrow?" "Of course. Will Latoya be comfortable?" "She gets scared easily with strangers now." "I understand perfectly. I have a lot of experience working with children who have suffered trauma. My office is designed specifically for them to feel safe." The next day, I took Latoya to her first appointment with the psychologist. The office was beautiful, full of colorful toys and storybooks. Owens was a middle-aged woman with a genuine smile and a very soft voice. "Hello, Latoya. I'm Dr. Brittany, but you can call me Dr. B. Do you like to play?" Latoya nodded shyly, holding my hand. "Do you want your grandmother to stay here with you while we play?" "Yes, please." For the next hour, I watched as Dr. Owens worked with my granddaughter. It was not a session of direct questions, but a play session where Latoya could express her feelings through dolls and drawings. At one point, Latoya took a doll and began to cut its hair with toy scissors. "What's happening to the doll?" the doctor asked softly. "Her mommy is punishing her because she misbehaved." "And how does the doll feel?" "Very sad and ugly." The doctor took notes discreetly. "Did the doll do something very bad?" Latoya thought for a moment. "No, she just spilled water." "And do you think spilling water deserves that punishment?" "I don't know. Mommy says it does." When the session ended, the doctor asked to speak with me in private while Latoya played in the waiting room. "Ms. Lewis, your granddaughter shows clear signs of psychological trauma. Her self-esteem is severely damaged, and she has a distorted perception of what behaviors deserve punishment. How serious is it?" "It's serious, but not irreversible. Children are very resilient. With consistent therapy and a safe environment, Latoya can recover completely." "How long will it take?" "Months, possibly a year." And that's just for Latoya. The parents also need intensive therapy before it's safe for her to return home. That afternoon, while Latoya was taking a nap, I reflected on everything I had learned. My granddaughter had not only suffered the trauma of the haircut, she had been living in a constant state of fear and anxiety for months, never knowing what normal behavior could result in humiliation or punishment. My phone rang. It was Danielle. "Tameka, how are things going?" "Better, but it's a slow process. The psychologist says it's going to take months." "What about Calvin and Kimberly? Calvin has been calling every day to talk to Latoya. He sounds genuinely regretful, but I haven't heard anything directly from Kimberly." "Well, I have news about that. I ran into Kimberly's sister at the supermarket yesterday, and what did she tell you?" "That Kimberly is in intensive therapy. Apparently, she's going 3 times a week and is taking medication for anxiety." "Medication?" "Yes. Apparently, she has impulse control problems that had never been diagnosed. The sister says Kimberly grew up in a very strict home where physical and psychological punishments were normal. That information made me think. It didn't justify what Kimberly had done, but at least it explained where her behavior came from. And how is Calvin reacting to all of this? According to the sister, he's devastated. He realized that he had been ignoring signs for years. He's in individual therapy and he's also going to parenting classes. That night, while I was reading a story to Latoya before bed, she surprised me with a question. "Grandma, do you think I'll ever be able to forgive Mommy?" It was a very deep question for a 6-year-old girl. "Do you want to forgive her?" Latoya thought for a moment. "Sometimes I do, but sometimes I'm still scared. It's okay to be scared, my love, and it's okay not to be ready to forgive yet. But if I don't forgive her, am I a bad girl?" "No, my sweetie. Forgiveness is something you can only do when you feel ready and safe. You don't have to rush. And what if I never feel ready? Then you never have to do it. Forgiveness is a gift you give when you want to, not when others need it." Latoya nodded, satisfied with my answer. She fell asleep peacefully that night without nightmares for the first time since she came to my house. But I stayed awake thinking about the future. What would happen if Kimberly really changed? What would happen if she didn't? Would Latoya have to grow up divided between her love for her father and her fear of her mother? Only time would tell. But one thing was for sure. As long as I had a voice and a vote, my granddaughter would never again suffer in silence. 3 weeks after the incident, I received a call that would change everything. It was Mr. Washington, my lawyer, and his voice sounded worried. "Tameka, I need to see you urgently. Calvin and Kimberly have filed a legal petition to regain custody of Latoya." I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. Can they do that? Legally, yes. They argue that they have been following all the therapeutic recommendations and that they have met the requirements. In addition, Kimberly has been officially diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder and is under medical treatment. What does that mean? It means they're going to argue that her behavior was the result of an undiagnosed medical condition and that now that she's being treated, she doesn't pose a danger to Latoya. I hung up the phone with my hands shaking. Latoya was in the yard playing with her new dolls, completely unaware of the storm that was approaching. Her hair had started to grow noticeably, forming a soft curly fuzz that shone in the sun. She no longer looked like the shaved, traumatized child from a month ago. That afternoon, Mr. Washington came to my house to explain the legal situation in detail. The judge has ordered a complete family evaluation. This includes interviews with everyone involved, psychological evaluations of the parents, and an evaluation of the home environment. And what about Latoya? Dr. Owens will have to present a report on Latoya's progress in her current mental state. Her opinion will be crucial for the judge's decision. When is the hearing? In 2 weeks. Only 2 weeks to prepare the case that would determine my granddaughter's future. I felt overwhelmed. The next day, Calvin called to ask to see me in person. I agreed, but on the condition that it was just him. When he arrived at my house, he looked completely different. He had lost weight, had deep dark circles under his eyes, and his posture was that of a defeated man. "Mom, I need to talk to you." "Sit down," I said dryly. Calvin sat on the edge of the sofa, nervous. "I know you're mad at me." "Mad?" I laughed bitterly. "Calvin, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. There's a huge difference." "I understand, and you have every right to be." "Do I really?" "After 3 weeks, you finally understand that your daughter was being mistreated under your own roof." Calvin lowered his head. "I've been in therapy, Mom. I'm starting to understand a lot of things that I ignored." "Like what?" "Like the fact that Latoya had changed completely in recent months. She had become so quiet, so timid. I thought it was a normal phase. A normal phase? My voice rose. Calvin, your daughter was terrified of her own mother. I know that now, but at the time I was so focused on keeping the peace at home that I ignored all the signs. Keeping the peace. I looked at him in disbelief. What peace, Calvin? The peace of ignoring that your wife was traumatizing your daughter. Calvin began to cry. It was the first time I had seen him cry since he was a child. Mom, I was a coward. I was afraid to confront Kimberly because when I did, she got worse. So, I decided it was easier to pretend that everything was fine, and meanwhile your daughter suffered in silence. Yes, and that's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw genuine remorse in my son, but remorse was not enough. Calvin, do you really think Kimberly has changed? She's in intensive therapy 3 times a week. She's taking medication. She's been diagnosed with a disorder that explains a lot of her behavior. That doesn't answer my question. Do you think she has changed? Calvin was silent for a long moment. I want to believe she has. Wanting to believe is not the same as believing. Mom, she's really trying. She's reading books on parenting. She's working with a therapist who specializes in anger management. She's even taking yoga classes for stress management. And what if all that doesn't work? What if she has a relapse? Are you willing to risk your daughter's mental health for a second chance? What choice do I have? She's my wife. Your choice is to protect your daughter above all else. Just then, LaToya ran in from the yard. Upon seeing her father, she stopped in her tracks. Her expression immediately changed from joy to caution. Hi, Dad, she said shyly. Calvin knelt down to her level. Hi, my princess. How are you? Good. Look, my hair is already growing, LaToya said, touching her little head. It looks beautiful, my love. LaToya came a little closer, but kept her distance. Dad, is Mommy not mad anymore? The question broke Calvin's heart. No, my sweetie. Mommy isn't mad. Mommy is very sad for having hurt you, and she's already learned not to be mean. Calvin looked at me, seeking help to answer such a direct question. I motioned for him to answer it himself. Mommy is learning my love. She's going to doctors who are helping her to be better. Like when I go with Dr. B. Exactly like that, LaToya was pensive. And what if Mommy doesn't learn well? Is she going to punish me badly again? The innocence of the question was devastating. Calvin couldn't answer. I intervened. LaToya, why don't you go play in the yard a little more while Dad and I finish talking? After LaToya left, Calvin completely broke down. Did you hear that? My own daughter is afraid that her mother is going to hurt her again? Yes, I heard. How can I ask her to go back home when she's so scared? That's a decision you have to make yourself, Calvin, but you have to make it by putting LaToya's well-being above all else. Calvin was silent for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. What would you do in my place? I would protect my daughter no matter the cost, even if it meant getting a divorce, especially if it meant getting a divorce. Calvin stood up to leave. At the door, he turned to me. Mom, I want you to know that if the judge determines that LaToya must return home, I'm going to do everything I can to protect her. And what if it's not enough? Then I'll have to make more drastic decisions. After Calvin left, I called Dr. Owens to inform her about the legal petition and ask her to speed up LaToya's evaluation. Doctor, I need you to understand that this hearing is going to determine whether LaToya returns to an environment that traumatized her. Your report could be the difference between safety and continued trauma. I understand perfectly, Ms. Lewis. I'm going to prepare a very detailed report on LaToya's current state and my recommendations for her future care. What's your professional opinion? Is LaToya ready to go back to her parents? Honestly, LaToya has made significant progress in these 3 weeks. She's starting to rebuild her self-esteem and has stopped having nightmares, but that has been in a completely safe and predictable environment. What does that mean? It means that if she returns to an environment where there's any possibility of the trauma being repeated, all the progress we've made could be lost. And what if the parents have been in therapy? Therapy is a long process. Real behavior changes take months, sometimes years. There's no way to guarantee that 3 weeks of therapy have created permanent changes. That night, while I was helping LaToya with her bath, she asked me a question that broke my soul. Grandma, are you going to have to give me back to Mommy and Daddy? I didn't want to lie to her, but I also didn't want to scare her. There are some important people who are going to decide what's best for you. And what if they decide I have to go back, but I don't want to? Then we're going to do everything we can to make sure your voice is heard. The important adults are going to listen to what I want. I hope so, my love. I hope so. But on the inside, I had my doubts. The legal system didn't always prioritize a child's wishes over a parent's rights, and Latoya was too young for her testimony to have much legal weight. I only had 2 weeks left to prepare for the most important case of my life, my granddaughter's future. The day of the hearing arrived too soon. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning with a stomach full of nerves. Latoya was still sleeping peacefully in my bed. Her hair had grown enough to form small curly twists that framed her sweet face. She no longer looked like the shaved, traumatized child from a month ago. While I was making breakfast, my phone rang. It was Dr. Owens. Ms. Lewis, I wanted to call you before the hearing. I have completed my evaluation and my recommendation is clear. Latoya should not return to her parents' home at this time. I felt a huge sense of relief. What did you find in your evaluation? Latoya still shows signs of post-traumatic stress when returning home is mentioned. Yesterday, during our last session, I asked her how she would feel if she had to go back to her parents, and she began to tremble. And what did you recommend? Extended temporary custody with you for at least 6 more months with gradually increased supervised visits if the parents continue to show progress in therapy. When Latoya woke up, I noticed that she was quieter than usual. At breakfast, she barely touched her favorite pancakes. What's wrong, my love? Grandma, today is the day the important people are going to decide. Yes, my sweetie. I have to talk to them. Only if you want to. No one is going to force you. Latoya was pensive. I want to talk to them. I want to tell them that I like being with you. Are you sure you don't have to do it? I'm sure. I want them to know that I don't have nightmares here anymore. The courtroom was full when we arrived. Calvin and Kimberly were sitting on the opposite side of the room with their lawyer. When Kimberly saw me walk in with Latoya, she turned pale. My granddaughter looked beautiful in a floral dress we had bought together, and her freshly washed hair was shining under the fluorescent lights. Kimberly looked different, too. She had lost weight, and her hair was styled conservatively. Her eyes, which used to always show that cruel arrogance, now looked dull and nervous. Calvin came up to me before the hearing began. Mom, I want you to know that no matter what happens today, I thank you for everything you've done for Latoya. And Kimberly. Calvin looked at his wife. Kimberly is grateful, too. She wants to talk to you. I have nothing to talk about with her. Please, Mom, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Kimberly approached shyly as if she were the scared child. Tameka, I want to apologize. It's not me you have to apologize to. I already apologized to Latoya, but I also need to apologize to you. I know I did unforgivable things. I looked her directly in the eyes. Do you really understand it, Kimberly? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? I've been in therapy for a month. I've been taking medication. For the first time in my life, I can clearly see what I did. Her eyes filled with tears. I traumatized my own daughter. I made her feel ugly and scared. What kind of monster does that? It was the first time I had heard her take real responsibility. And what guarantee do I have that it won't happen again? None, Kimberly admitted. I can't promise you that I'll never have another episode, but I can promise you that now I have tools to manage my anger. And I can promise you that if I feel like I'm going to lose control, I'm going to walk away. And what if Latoya doesn't want to come back with you? Kimberly broke down. Then I'll have to live with the consequences of my actions. But I hope that someday she can forgive me. When the hearing began, the judge was an older man with a serious expression. First, he listened to the testimony of Calvin and Kimberly's lawyer, who presented all the medical and therapeutic documentation that showed the family's progress. Your Honor, the lawyer said, my client has been diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder, a condition that had not been previously identified. She is under intensive medical and psychological treatment. She has completed classes in anger management and positive parenting techniques. Then it was Mr. Washington's turn. Your Honor, progress on paper does not guarantee this child's safety. Latoya suffered severe psychological trauma that is documented by a specialized child psychologist. Dr. Owens was called to testify. Her testimony was devastating for Calvin and Kimberly's case. Your Honor, in my professional evaluation, this child still shows clear signs of trauma. When I ask her about returning home, she exhibits physical and emotional anxiety responses. She has made significant progress in a safe environment, but that progress is fragile. What is your recommendation, doctor? Extended temporary custody with the grandmother for a minimum of 6 additional months with monthly evaluations and supervised visits that can be gradually increased if the parents continue to show substantial progress. When it was Latoya's turn to testify, the judge asked for the room to be cleared except for the parents, the lawyers, and me. Latoya sat in a special children's chair next to the judge. "Hello, Latoya. I'm Judge Donnell. Do you know why we're here?" "Yes, sir. To decide if I have to go back with Mommy and Daddy." "And what do you want?" Latoya looked at her parents, then at me. "I want to stay with my grandma." "Why?" "Because with my grandma, I'm not scared. I sleep all night without nightmares, and my grandma never tells me I'm ugly." The judge took notes. "Are you afraid of your mommy?" Latoya nodded. "A little bit. Before I was very scared, but now just a little bit. And of your daddy. I'm not afraid of Daddy, but Daddy didn't protect me when Mommy hurt me." Calvin covered his face with his hands. Those simple words from his 6-year-old daughter perfectly summarized his failure as a father. "What happened to your hair, Latoya?" "Mommy cut it all with Daddy's machine because she said I was a dirty girl, but I had bathed the day before." "And how did you feel?" "Very sad and ugly. Mommy told me that girls without pretty hair are ugly." "Did your mommy say anything else?" "She told me that if I told anyone, she was going to cut my eyelashes too." The silence in the room was absolute. Even Calvin and Kimberly's lawyer looked uncomfortable. "Do you like your hair now?" Latoya smiled for the first time during the testimony. "Yes, my grandma tells me it looks beautiful and puts special oil on it to make it grow fast." "Do you want to see your mommy and daddy?" "Yes, but I don't want to live with them yet. I want to stay with my grandma until I'm not scared." After Latoya's testimony, the judge called a recess. During those 30 longest minutes of my life, Latoya and I waited in the hallway. She had behaved like an incredibly brave child. "Do you think the judge is going to let me stay with you?" she asked me. "I hope so, my love. You told the truth, and that's the most important thing." When we returned to the courtroom, the judge had his decision. "After reviewing all the evidence and hearing all the testimonies, I have reached the following conclusion. Although I recognize the progress that Calvin and Kimberly have made, the safety and well-being of the minor Latoya must be the absolute priority." My heart was beating so fast that I thought everyone was going to hear it. Therefore, I order extended temporary custody with Ms. Lewis for an additional period of 6 months. During this time, the parents will have supervised visits twice a week, gradually increasing according to Dr. Owens's recommendations. Kimberly began to cry silently. Calvin closed his eyes with a mix of relief and pain. In addition, the judge continued, the parents must continue with intensive individual and family therapy. There will be monthly evaluations, and any incident that puts the minor's well-being at risk will result in the immediate termination of all visitation rights. When we left the courthouse, Latoya took my hand and looked at me with those wise eyes that had seen too much for her age. "Grandma, does this mean I'm going to be safe?" "Yes, my love. This means you're going to be safe." That night, as I tucked Latoya into bed, she asked me one last question. "Do you think I'll ever be able to live with Mommy and Daddy again?" "I don't know, my sweetie. But I do know that when that day comes, if it comes, you'll be ready and you'll be safe. And you'll always be my protecting grandma. Always, my love. No matter what happens, I will always protect you." Latoya fell asleep with a smile on her face. Her curly hair was spread on the pillow like a halo. She was no longer the traumatized child who had arrived at my house a month ago. She was a child who was learning to be strong, to use her voice, and to know that she deserved to be loved and protected. And I had kept my promise. I had protected my granddaughter no matter the cost. Sometimes love requires courage, and sometimes courage requires saying enough is enough when no one else is willing to.